Norwegian town of Spa declares in its name the first reason for its fame, but for motor racing fans it's synonymous with one of the best circuits in the world. And in July it hosts the 24-hour race, this year attracting 37 cars and over 190 drivers assembled outside the casino for the traditional group photograph. On the Wednesday afternoon, the town flocked to see the cars as well, on display in the centre before parading back to the circuit in convoy. At the back, Jonathan France's Embassy Porsche was looking for success in the GT2 category.
He is a mechanic. I'm not.
To share the driving burden with regulars Ben Collins and Neil Cunningham, Jonathan had enlisted Sascha Maassen from Aachen, just over the border in Germany.
Okay. I like the circuit very much. It's my favorite circuit in Europe, and it's beautiful. Just the weather sometimes can be a little bit strange, but that's what I'm used to because I come from this area, so I know how to handle that.
Sascha is the current GT2 champion and drove the Embassy car in the LMES last year, so he was well placed to help with the setup.
We are coming along well. It's already good. I like Ben, I like Neil, so it's a good team, and all the other chaps here, they are really fun and good to work with, and they are professional. It's a good. So I think it will go along by itself.
Thursday's practice session ended with a clash between Ben and the much faster GT1 Ferrari of Christophe Bouchou at the bus stop.
Unfortunately, I got completely wiped out by this Ferrari that hit me at the back when I was braking for the bus stop. So Bouchou, I think, was driving. He's a complete idiot, so everyone knows that. It's just one of those things. As I was braking, I'd gone down about 3 or 4 gears and then just got hit in the front right, but it hit me quite hard, and I was still doing about 100 miles an hour, and I lost my brakes, so I had to try and put the brake pedal up quite quickly and get some braking, and I just glanced the other wall as well because it hit me hard enough to knock me from one side of the track to the other, and just get back on the brakes again before I had to come dive into the pit lane. It was either dive into the pit lane or into a tyre wall, so I chose the easy option.
The 2 evening qualifying sessions gave the team the chance to drive through the dusk and to try out the lights in the dark, and for Neil Cunningham, the first of the rain.
It's scary because there's so much spray from the other cars. We've just started to set up the headlights, and they were set up wrong for that run. So the first lap was a nightmare just to try and get back to the pits without going off the track. Each lap we've done there, it's getting better and better, so at least we can see where we're going.
Neil was responsible for Jonathan being at Spa in the first place.
I first came here in 2003 with Neil when he drove the Morgan. It was the whole atmosphere of the place and just the scale of the event that made me want to come back in my own right.
You must get a heck of a buzz, though, to be in charge of this great effort that's going on here.
Yeah, I certainly do. I mean, the car went down to parade in the town yesterday, and to see it down there brought a little lump to the throat, and it sort of brought it home what a big event this really is.
With the lights adjusted, the team was then plagued by a misfire, traced to a faulty throttle potentiometer. But technical director Jeff Kingston was pleased with what they'd achieved.
We've got the car into a position with the balance is good now. We had to change the setup a great deal during the day, and we're happy with what we have now. The wet or dry, we seem to have a well-balanced car, and yeah, should be okay.
So around midnight, the team set about changing the engine for the final qualifying session on the Friday. With 45 minutes track time to ensure the new engine and gearbox were working fine, the team hit a glitch. The new engine wouldn't start. Despite the best endeavours of 3 top Porsche engineers, qualifying came and went with the engine refusing to fire. For Neil, the loss of valuable track time was desperately frustrating. Eventually, they diagnosed a defective crank sensor, just like at Donington, its effects masked by a separate wiring fault. By mid-afternoon, it was possible to start the planned replacement of all worn suspension parts. Once complete, the team could aim for an early night, as the weekend promised to be pretty hectic. Saturday is race day at the Spa 24 Hours, and the team had just 15 minutes in the early morning warm-up to prove the car was ready to go. Jeff entrusted the time to his most experienced hand, Sascha.
I always think the guy that starts the race should be the last guy to drive it before the race, so Sascha's doing it.
Thankfully, the warm-up revealed no more problems, even if Sasha had some reservations about their qualifying speed, fourth fastest out of the 7 entries in GT2.
We are a little bit nervous about the performance. I think we have a very good car for the rain, so in Spa it's always raining, so maybe hope for 24 hours of rain.
As Miles Schofield took the obligatory PR photo, there were 7.5 hours to go before the 4 o'clock start, and the biggest challenge the fledgling team had yet faced. So far, there'd been enough dramas for them to hope for a quieter race. With the start 15 minutes away, the fickle Ardennes weather showed its hand to Neil's satisfaction.
It would be a good thing, to be truthful. It will slow the race down and be light on the cars. So at the moment we're just looking at the track. It's enters when you look at the track here, but because the track's so long, it's probably raining in the valley. So we'll get out in wets, full wets, and be safe.
The spectators were as well prepared as the teams for the heavy downpour on the green flag lap. Nothing so trivial could spoil their enjoyment, but for one man there was already a degree of satisfaction.
First of all, very pleased to be here and have made it without too many dramas. And let's just hope we get to the end. This time tomorrow it'll be nearly all over.
You say that those last 3 days, all those ups and downs, that's not too many dramas. You must be very phlegmatic.
Well, we took it all in our stride. We'd come well prepared and we've just done as much as we could, really.
And the object in view at the moment?
Get to the finish.
Around the Lassource hairpin, the field stretched out ahead of the Embassy Porsche, starting 4th in its class, but 22nd on the road. At the front, the cream of the GT1 class, led by one of the 3 Maseratis from 2 Astons, 3 Ferraris, a Corvette and a Celine that made up the top 10. In a 24-hour race, you can only lose on the first lap. Sasha sought to keep out of trouble in the spray, but for one of the GT2s, Eddie Motors car number 74, the first lap was also the last. Now there were only 6 in the class, all Porsche 996s. In the early stages, the 2 ProDrive Aston Martins who'd won the TT at Silverstone made their way to the front. The Embassy team was keen to settle into a pattern. A fuel stop roughly every hour, tyres and drivers changed every 2. Just keep it running like that for a day and see where they ended up at the finish. But nothing is ever as simple as that. Sasha was reporting oversteer everywhere, and the nose was chattering under braking at Les Combes, the first sign of a recurring problem. Next time round, one of the 2 semi-works Gruppe M Porsches went straight on there. Both 88 and its teammate 66 were expected to lead the field, but they weren't infallible. Nor was Sasha. This run over the grass a minute later was pretty mild, but it didn't help the doubtful mounting of the nose. The first driver change was brought forward by 40 minutes, with Neil taking over from Sasha. It gave the team the chance to tape up the nose to steady it, but the Embassy problems were minor compared to the Proton team. Car 69 lost 7 laps, sorting out its rear suspension. That left Embassy in 4th, a lap down on the Gruppe M cars and the Italian Orlando car number 67. As the 2 Astons circulated together in 4th and 5th behind the lead Maseratis, the second Gruppe M car, 88, again hit trouble at the exit of Malmedy. Emmanuel Collard limped back to the pits, but the damage was severe and would take an age to repair if it was possible at all. But Kenny Chen's British team didn't hesitate. A second in the garage is the same length as one out on the track. Meanwhile, their teammates in car 66 were carving through the back markers, 9th on the road and in the lead of GT2. After his shortened stint, Sasha was ready to relax and sort out some food with physio Richard Chessman.
It was
already checked your food's ready. I wasn't
yeah.
Well, I wasn't expecting you in too early, so I'll see if the food's ready. I've got some chicken platter. I'll bring it over here.
Oh, I'm coming.
Yeah.
In the lead Maserati, Eric van der Poel gave his Belgian compatriots something to cheer about. More coming up after the break. Welcome back to the 2005 Spa 24 Hours from Belgium. After 3 hours, as Neil Cunningham brought the Embassy Racing Porsche in for Ben Collins to take over for his first stint, the team found themselves in third, just 2 minutes down on the Orlando car in second, with the 66 machine, the grumpy Porsche as the team call them, 3 laps ahead of them both. After the early rain, even the surface had dried, everything going according to plan so far, to team manager Doug Bebb's evident satisfaction. Meanwhile, the Grupper M mechanics was still struggling to restore the 88 grumpy Porsche to health, but the car was already 37 laps behind car 66. Kenny Chen wasn't giving in yet, though. Then Ben reported over the radio that he'd gone off onto the gravel at Pouhon after missing the brake pedal. On his return to the pits, the nose showed the damage, and it meant the first visit to the garage for repairs. Fitting the emergency straps cost 7 precious minutes, the first big test for the mechanics. Under Jonathan Francis' critical gaze, and with Ben eager to make amends back on track, there was clearly some confusion in the garage.
I have no instructions whatsoever.
As the 4th hour ended, Embassy was still secure in third, 11 laps up on the Proton, car number 69. But you can never be sure of your position for long. Ben had passed the Orlando car on the previous lap, but braking into Les Combes, they tried to get the position back and spun. Unfortunately, they collided with Ben, and both cars were off. That meant a pit stop to check the damage to the right rear corner that had taken the impact. A big patch of magic tape covered the damage, and the car was ready to return to the fray. Darkness falls over the Ardennes. For the teams, the prospect of 19 more hours of hard racing. For the fans, time to eat, drink and enjoy the other entertainments, until fatigue catches up with them all. As the hours passed towards midnight, the Embassy car still held third, with a 15-lap lead over the Proton team, 45 laps over the repaired grumpy Porsche. But there was trouble in store. Sasha returned to the pits with a broken half shaft. A worried Jonathan France listened to his explanation.
First part, what is it? Gearbox, differential, and then okay, drive shaft, because I could in 6 gears just barely accelerate.
No mistakes then, it seemed, probably just a legacy of the earlier impact on the right rear. Just after midnight, 1/3 of the way through the race, Neil returned to the track. The half-hour lost meant the Proton car was now just 5 laps adrift, but Neil's ferocious race pace stretched that out to 9. There was, however, still something wrong with the right rear. The car was running too low. The wheel arch was cutting a groove into that right rear tyre. Something needed to be done to prevent a blowout. At 3:30 in the morning, the mechanics tried to level up the rear of the car.
106. 106. 5.
The delays saw the Proton car take that coveted third podium place. An hour later, halfway through the race, Jonathan prepared to tell Ben that they'd fought back to third. Could they hang on for the next 12 hours? As Sunday dawned dry and clear, Sasha arrived on the pit wall, ready to take over from Ben. They were still third, but further delays meant they were now back on the same lap as the Proton car. Sasha would want to put some distance between them and their rivals to secure the podium that they'd come to believe was theirs for the taking. This would call for a combination of speed and caution. He'd have to be both tortoise and hare. With his job done for the moment, Ben reported on the dramas through the night.
I quite enjoyed my 2 stints, but yeah, it was pretty action-packed. Trying to get the, we had a drive shaft go before I was in the car. Damaged the suspension before, so trying to fix that. It was basically bodywork rubbing on the tyre, which kept tearing a chunk out of the rear tyre, which meant that it might have deflated in one of the really quick corners, so we had to make sure that that was working. After that, it ran pretty well.
Ben was less forthcoming about the effects of his over-eager braking. He'd flat spotted one of his tyres so severely, there was a danger of a blowout at any moment. With 10 hours of the race remaining, it was time to risk fitting the remaining new nose, in an effort to cure the problem they'd had right since the start. The repaired grumpy car 88 was still down in 6th, not going much faster than the steady Czech national team in 5th, but their main rivals, the 69 Proton team, were running neck and neck with them, with their 2 father and son pairings in the driver lineup. If they could just run trouble-free, the Embassy team could expect to regain the upper hand. Jonathan had hired Richard Chessman to keep his 3 drivers in top condition during the race. He'd had years of experience in the services, keeping the troops fit to fight.
My job description is basically physio, so I look after the drivers. I make sure they've got the right food, they're hydrated, they're nicely warmed up, they're relaxed before they get in the car. After they get out of the car, it's my job to make sure that I can get them as healthy as I can in the short time that I've got before they're back in the car again.
What about sleep through the night?
You tend to find they don't actually get into a full sleep as you would do at home. They're kind of cat nap, but they'll probably try and grab about 2 hours between each stint. They'll do about 2 hours in the car and 4 hours out of the car, which the body only needs 4 hours to replenish itself anyway. So
It's a bit frightening to think you're barely more than halfway through.
I know, but you tend to find that when you get to this point, you can now see the light at the end of the tunnel, and everyone starts to get a new buzz and a new lease of life today. Now the sun's coming up, so everyone will be as good as they were when we started.
The hours after dawn were thankfully uneventful. The Embassy car was now 4 laps up on Proton 69 and 36 laps up on the 88 Gruppa M car. Their teammates had a 6-lap lead over the Orlando car when they broke a throttle cable. As they crept back to the pits, the Embassy car went by at the La Source hairpin, then only 37 laps down. Fitting a new throttle cable on a Porsche is not easy. Embassy had fitted a spare one back at base and then connected the awkward engine end in advance. It took the grumpy mechanics 15 minutes to finish the job, and they left the pits 3 laps down in second. It wasn't long before Embassy had their own misfortune, Neil returning with a blown tyre after a collision. Then the suspension was seen to be out of true, and that meant further investigation in the garage. It turned out to be a broken rear subframe. After a long night, it might have been enough to break the mechanics, but they stuck to their task. Neil explained what had happened.
We caught a slower car, and I don't know which corner it is, a right-hander. He spun, So as I avoided to miss him off the track, he then took his brakes off and rolled across off the track, hit the back of the car. So, you know, if he had left stayed on the brakes, we would have got around. I thought the guy came from the driver's the right-hand door, but he just got the back wheel and broke the suspension. It's just how it goes. Unbelievable.
By the time the car returned to the track 70 minutes later, they dropped 17 laps behind the Proton car. And the grumpy Porsche 88 was now just 8 laps behind. All they could do now was hang on to fourth and hope the others hit trouble. Fortune dictated otherwise. When Ben stopped for wets after 21 hours, the left rear wheel nut froze on. The only way to free it was by drilling holes in the nut alongside the stub axle. The operation took 8 minutes, but by then the rain had stopped anyway. The delay was enough to cede fourth to the repaired Grupper M88, whose teammates were now back in the class lead as well. But the Embassy team never gave up and kept within a lap of fourth until near the end, appropriately a very wet end to a tough and exhausting challenge. The final GT1 order was Maserati first and second, Ferrari third and fourth, and Aston Martin fifth and sixth. In GT2, the grumpy Porsche team posted first and fourth, showing the virtue of great persistence. The Embassy team showed the same tenacity, and they gleaned their own satisfaction from bringing the car home in one piece in their first 24-hour race.
Was that good or what?
That was fantastic. It's a great weekend for us. It was the hardest race I've ever done in my life. And so I'm actually looking for the next one now.
Jonathan's done a fantastic job putting everything that we needed, all the infrastructure to get here. I think I'm not surprised, but I think it's amazing that we finished, and yeah, great result.
But not on the podium. For Jeff Kingston, with a dozen or more 24-hour races behind him, how did it compare with all the others?
As tiring as all the others, and yeah, it's disappointing. It's a long way to go without a result, and it looked like we were going to get one. Unfortunately, we didn't. But yeah, tired and a bit disappointed. But yeah, it's nice to get to the end.
Finally, the man responsible for all the effort and stress. How did Jonathan France reflect on his first 24-hour race?
Well, I think we've collectively as a team gone through every emotion sort of known to man. It hasn't been easy, and at times, certainly during the middle of the night, when you question your sanity for putting yourself and other people through this kind of adventure.
You said success will be the finish, and you finished, so successful.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, there's a lot of people who don't finish the first 24-hour race. We've done it, and okay, it wasn't the podium we hoped for, but it's still something good to have on the CV.